Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do.
In this episode, I interview Roma Khan, CEO of CrushContracts and inventor of GlobalNDA, who shares with us her life philosophy that you can't just say you don't like something, you have to do something about it, and how that's driven her fierce dedication to her work and to her community. Hey there, and welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin. I'll be your host, and I'm thrilled to have Roma Khan on today. Now, Roma is a CEO and founder of CrushContracts, Crush Legal. She is the inventor of GlobalNDA. She's an attorney, and she is also a fashion enthusiast. I'm so excited to have her here. Roma?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for having me on your awesome podcast and for that kind introduction. I am excited to be here to talk about anything you want to ask. I will answer you.
Well, awesome. I know that you're involved in so many things. You have so many things that you're jungling in the air with CrushContracts, Crush Legal, GlobalNDA. Also, you have the Academy coming up in June.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So let's get back to where things started. Like I know that you started off as a philosophy major, right, in Northridge?
Well, I fell into philosophy. I was a business major. I had changed my major many times during college because I wanted to do something that really excited me, and all these things excited me when I was younger. But there came a point where my counselor said, you have more philosophy credits than any other subject as a whole. And I didn't realize I was just taking them, because I was enjoying it. And so I said, all right. And he goes, why don't you graduate with philosophy? And you have enough. So I said, all right. And that was one of those things where you just do things and you don't realize that you actually have a natural talent for it or you love it. And then I said yes, and I graduated, and I loved it because once I recognized that this is what I love and this is what I want to do, I was all in and I did philosophy.
So I know we jumped way back, but I think it's important to understand where we come from, and I want to take a moment to look at that. Like what drew you to philosophy besides the credit part? There was something that initially interested you, and what was that, and why did you feel drawn to that versus history or politics and economics or anything else?
Well, I've always been a thinker and I like to go beyond what appears. I questioned religion when I was a kid. I questioned norms. I grew up as an Indian Muslim in Saudi Arabia. Then we lived in India for a little while. So when somebody says something to me that this is how we do it, I start to wonder, well, why? If the why makes sense, then fine. If the why doesn't, then I have to ask and I have to not do that or find a better way of doing things. So I've always passionate about causes and the right thing. And when you take philosophy, you realize it's the beginning of everything. It was the beginning of science. It was the beginning of reasoning. So I was naturally into that. Also, my grandfather was an unofficial philosopher. He was a professor. He had this group of friends who would come together and talk about philosophy. They grew up in colonial India. They talked quite a bit about whether India should get the freedom or should not. So I absorbed a lot of that from him, and the concept of you can think about something and talk about it in abstract and then be able to solve issues. I mean, it was great. It was just seemed like math, but with words. So I was drawn to it, and that's why I think I took those classes, because it started to help me look at things beyond and also look at things logically, right? And made me understand you can't just make a statement or an argument. It has to have some logic in it. And how do you do that? And I'm really glad, because I was a philosophy major. My passion for justice was also simultaneously happening. And I realized that philosophy is the first step into going to law, better than political science.
Yeah, and as I shared with you, I was a philosophy major undergrad too, and yeah, the thought process was a little similar. Like I thought that the law was like applied philosophy in a way. Um, So when you were studying philosophy, you said the justice part kind of came into it. How did it come into it?
Well, I'm an immigrant, so justice part has been part of my journey, anyways, as I started, just living here, or even when we immigrated from India. And we lived in post 9/11 America as Muslim Americans. We see a lot of just things happening around you. And from day-to-day basis, like my parents signing bad contracts or me signing a bad contract and then having to pay the consequences of that. So laws are around us. We need to be able to understand them, even for ourselves. And then and injustice is always happening around it. It doesn't necessarily always have to be some social justice or criminal justice, right? Someone can just wrong you in a contract, in a deal. And if you don't get prepared for it, or you don't get, justice for it, then that's a miscarriage of, that injustice happening. So I became a lawyer because I was always passionate about things, but my mom was the one to say that, you can't just talk about things. You have to be able to then do things. So find the right way. And the right way of doing that was through becoming a lawyer. And I thought that, at the very least, if I can learn the laws to take care of myself and protect my family, that's the most important reason why I went to law school, to learn the laws for myself, to take care of my family. Anything after that, is like the passion part of it, the hobby part of it, like whatever law I wanted to practice. So, thinking logically, advocating for others, learning to communicate better. These were all things that were happening in my personal life. And I believe that law school was the perfect answer to becoming really good at them and connecting all of those pieces together.
I think if you like somebody who's living in the culture and doesn't have an outsider's perspective,
Yeah.
might take a lot of that like for granted and not even have to interact with it, right?
Yeah.
But naturally, like I'm an immigrant to Canada. Like I'm, I born and grew up in the United States. And so when I came up here, naturally there was like all these issues and questions that were legal questions that came up about immigration for me too. So I completely understand that. Um, so, all right, you're now studying the law, and I know that everything you're doing now is very much like small business, small and medium business related. Where did that transition come? Like, I know you've done some work as a fractional general counsel. So let's talk a little bit about the move from completing your legal
First
education.
job out of law school. I mean, I was always a big corporate girl. I worked for big banks when I was an undergrad. I never saw myself as a small business person. I always wanted to be a big business CEO, work for, corporate America. And then my passion turned into criminal justice when I was in law school, and I wanted to be a prosecutor. I went to law school to be a prosecutor. But I graduated in 2009. It was the beginning of the recession, furloughs and jobs were being pulled, offers were being pulled, and there were no hirings happening. So people had to figure out, lawyers at that time had to figure out how to make money and what kind of job. And we all know that for most attorneys, for most lawyers, the job that they take right after law school becomes the job that they do for the rest of their life. So a lot of people would go into personal injury, would go into trial, litigation. And I just didn't know, I knew I didn't want to do that, but I was committed to being a prosecutor because I felt, again, justice and catching the bad guys and putting them in prison, that kind of mentality. But that wasn't happening. And I needed to get a full-time job at some point. And so I saw an opportunity as a contracts manager at a Fortune 20 company. And I said, okay, it's not forever. I'm not a sellout. Every job is paid training. Roma, go to this job, learn as much as you can from here, and then apply that when the jobs open again at the district attorney's office. And I, motivated myself. I took this job, and in 3 days, I was so excited. I'm like, oh my God, I love this. I love everything about it, because I was, so prior to the philosophy switch, I was a business major. I've always had a keen eye for business. I told you I worked for big corporations undergrad. I just got that, mentality, the way the businesses worked. So I'm very grateful for getting that job, because it opened my eyes to my natural abilities, the communication, the business, the transactional part of things, and it was a high tech company. So, and I'm such a tech girl and a gadget girl that I just ate it all up. And it was a big learning lesson for me, that we may think we want something and we may be working hard or working upwards towards something, and not recognizing the gifts that we already have that can give us easier success. And when I say easy, means you can get to more successful points quickly, then it gives you that feeling of progress and reward. And then you can also continue to do the things you want to. But you can't always be struggling to do the things you want to that you may not be great at or may never come to you, and ignore the gifts and possibilities that are sitting right in front of you because you don't think that that's for you. So it taught me to recognize my internal skills, my God-given skills, and then to sharpen them, and then continue to support the justice causes. I run nonprofits. If there is anything I can do for the criminal justice world, I will, if I help, And so I try to keep my passion in support of that world going by, continue to be successful in the world that I am really good at. And I do love contracts, and I love corporate law, and I did love working for big companies. But I think in 2013, I had this epiphany that, all these companies have these custom in-house contract management tools. So I've been working with CLMs since 2011. It's not something new for me. They weren't called CLMs because CLM technically actually are not just legal or contract management software. It's an incorrect use of the term. A CLM is something that starts from bid to all the way, you finished the contract and exited the deal. What people are doing, and Lucy Bassey and I talked about it quite a bit a couple of years ago, that people are misusing this term, but now that it's become a legal industry word only used for contract management, I try to tell people that, I use a CLM way before everyone. But anyhow, coming back to this topic. So I noticed that legal departments were not making the best use of their time and resources. If they needed help, they would go out and work with a staffing agency. It would take a month and a half to interview people, bring them on, and only use them for 6 months and then let them go. Or if you needed to access a contract, this really wasn't a smart repository, or it was too customizable. I mean, anytime anybody moved or was on vacation, contracts weren't getting signed because the control and access wasn't that great. Because again, each company was kind of designing their own model. There weren't a lot of SaaS options, and there weren't a lot of standardized options. So I wanted to create one, and I went out to research. I was a fractional or flex support member for many Fortune 500 companies. I really enjoyed working there. It also gave me an idea, do I want to be a GC? Do I want to work for this industry or that industry? And I did a few years of research. I realized in that time that a lot of tech startups, when you're a lawyer, everybody hits you up for legal advice. So I was getting a lot of referrals from like these tech startups in Chicago, which was just beginning to see its tech revolution. And I started helping them. And I had this moment that I think that SMBs and startups need this kind of support more than enterprise. Enterprise has the money. They'll spend money on the outside counsel. They'll spend money on big software, right? And there were some large enterprise software already there. So I started thinking about where the problem was, where the need was, and my passion grew for startups and SMBs and mid-market companies. Frankly, I enjoy working with them because they are easy to pivot. They don't have a lot of red tape. Those clients are just, I find them high energy, and they're always, doing so many different things. So then we pivoted, and I said, I think before I even launched the company, I said, I'm going to build a software for contracts management for SMBs. And how we're going to pay for it is by continuing the consulting work, because I also enjoy being a lawyer and I don't want to stop being a lawyer. We are completely self-funded in all the things that we do. And so CrushContracts came about as a contract solution company. And under that, we launched Zoey, which is the contract management software for small businesses and very small startups. And then GlobalNDA, which is the NDA solution of the future for everyone, which we appreciate so much for being recognized at the awards last year. And then it's our CrushContracts consulting firm, contract review, technology implementation. And finally, this year, we're doing the CrushContracts Academy, which is a fast-paced learning event and, a good place for everybody to come if they're not doing anything in the summer.
Wow, that's a ton of stuff. And I understand now, like the focus on SMBs, and also, one thing I really admire about you is your drive, and your business sense, because the way that you attack all of these different problems and the energy with which you do it it's really impressive.
Thank you. Thank you.
One of the things that you said, I wanted to get a little further into, though. You said that when you were looking at your strengths, weaknesses that we all have, and you want to focus on the strengths because those are the ones that are easier in a sense to do more on, to make a bigger impact with. You had mentioned that sometimes it's possible to not know what that strength is, or to not know to
Yeah.
focus on it. Like, how did you make that distinction? How did you recognize the ones that were the strengths that you could make a much bigger impact with?
You have to try, I mean, I saw an opportunity that wasn't in criminal justice, but it was an opportunity and it matched my skills. So I took it. And only by doing it within a couple of days, I realized, where my strengths were. So I think the older we get, the more self-aware we become, right? We know what we like, what we don't like, what we want to sacrifice our time for or not. But when you're younger, I think the best way to do is just try different things and see what you are just naturally good at, what makes you happy, and then you can pursue that. And it's risky, right? I mean, you can't keep trying or trying different jobs, but you can even take a job that may not be the thing that you wanted and find elements in that job that can make you excited and make you find your natural talent. So if you're, let's say, in a department that doesn't have a lot of excitement, in an industry that's not very sexy, but you are sitting there going, okay, what else can I do? Who else can I talk to? If I have to do a massive data migration project, then what of that can you start looking into? Do I like the AI piece of this? Do I like the actual data piece of this? So it's upon us to inquire further and see, with the things that we have available, what works for us and what we are excited about. And if, let's say, nothing excites you, then okay, start looking for another job. At that point.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit more about Crush Contracts, Crush Legal, for people that aren't as familiar with those two different things. Like, how are they different? What do you what are you trying to accomplish with Crush Contracts versus Crush Legal?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So CrushContracts, when we came about, we had this revolutionary idea of like no billable hours, remote on-demand services. It's not staffing, it's service. It's like the best of the outside counsel and staffing. And we wanted to sell this concept of block hours. So instead of committing yourself to staffing, you could just buy a block of hours and then utilize them, kind of like doing the old school calling cards. You have time left, then you can use it on demand. And at that time, people weren't really understanding the remote on demand piece, and it's fine. Some people did. And so we weren't really looking to build a law firm. We wanted to provide instant contract support to legal departments that already had GCs and were looking for that, quick and efficient support. So Crush Legal is interesting because that's actually, my law firm that I've had, Roma Khan Law, since 2013. It is, despite all the technology we have and all the solutions we provided, I have come to realize that people need people and people still need lawyers. And they reach out for legal help. And we, and because prior to the alternative business structure from Arizona and Utah, you couldn't have a non-lawyer owning a legal practice. And we wanted to make sure that Crush Contracts wasn't engaging in legal advice. And so we created Crush Legal. And anybody that doesn't have a lawyer or needs an outside counsel, we provide that service through Crush Legal. So law firm is separate from Crush Contracts. Primarily, our business is Crush Contracts. Most of our clients are in-house counsel and general counsel. But from time to time, we get companies and startups that don't have lawyers and need our help. And we have attorneys in a few states right now. We're growing. If anybody's interested in working with Crush Legal, we're happy to talk to them. But I also have learned that you need to focus, Roma. We can't have too many things happening at the same time. So that's why you don't hear too much about Crush Legal. If something falls into Crush Contracts that clearly feels like this is more legal advice, then we move it forward to Crush Legal. Otherwise, most of the work is, Crush Contracts.
And I hear you about focus, because I have the same challenge myself.
Yeah. I mean, Crush Contracts is interesting, right? Because it provides kind of like, hey, we need help. What help? Well, we need you to do this and do that. Then you can get in and do all that. When you're a law firm, right, it's a little bit different. You're there to provide legal counsel and advice, and there are other matters involved. They can't just come in and do your technology implementation, right? So that's why Crush Contracts is more tech focused, legal department focused, innovation focused, really truly about supporting legal departments and contracts departments become better and more efficient. And I don't know if you know my philosophy, but contracts are business documents. They're not legal documents. So with that in mind, we build everything in Crush Contracts as, a business support company.
That's a nice mindset switch to have when you look at it.
Yeah, they're as legal as anything else is, right? They're lawful. They have to be lawful to be enforceable, but they're a business document. They're a business deal on a document. So have to look at it from a business perspective, have to tackle it from a business perspective. And ultimately, the business is making these deals and they have to be responsible for it. We're there to support the business, as in-house counsel, as CrushContracts, we're supporting the in-house counsel. But the business really has to own it and run it and manage that contract. So we provide business support to these companies.
And I love the name CrushContracts. It's like, yes, that's what I want to do. I want to crush contracts, be done, go home, enjoy my life.
Yeah.
And also like the branding, the colors, you even have the colors going on there in your room with the little
the
bird.
gray and yellow, gray. Yeah, Contracts Charlie.
Contracts Charlie.
Yeah, we were trying to find a name for him, and I said, "What about this?" And it said Contracts Charlie, and my stepdaughter said, "Yeah, like Charlie and the Contracts Factory." I was like,
"Yeah, that's cool." So global NDA. Let's talk a little bit about that. That's a fantastic way of getting people, especially SMBs, to be able to very easily and quickly get an NDA put together, because that's the start of a lot of business relationships, right?
It is, yeah. I mean, we find that, whether in large companies or even small, a lot of time is spent on signing NDAs. Even with the best of the CLM and every option out there still makes you generate a new document, sign a new document, and store that document, and then have to look for that NDA every single time. Most of them also don't get signed and they never really get looked at. So what this has turned into, I mean, there's a good reason to have a mutual NDA, right? To start a conversation, but is it really efficient? And is it now causing busy work for things that may not even happen? So what we did with Global NDA, and we hope to do with other contracts, is it's not a standard template or this and that. It's an actual opt-in registry where there is a public mutual non-disclosure agreement, and two people have read it and opted into it. So every member of Global NDA is now subject to that mutual NDA that they've opted into. And now they can start talking to the members freely. And it works if more and more people join. So all the members, somebody said it's like a social network of companies in an NDA. I'm like, yes, that's what it is. We've all agreed to the same terms. We don't have to constantly execute. The other options that are existing are, they're crawling towards the advancement, which is still like, you still have to execute a contract and you still have volume being created. We want to innovate contracts and reduce contracts, the number of contracts. So here you've opted in once, that's it. As long as it continues to renew, you don't have to sign the agreement. You can talk to 100 people in the Global NDA registry with opting in once versus signing 100 agreements with everybody else.
So it's kind of a NDA click wrap agreement in a way, right?
It is, yeah. It is, but it's not individually done with every single person. So, but it is like that. It's very simple. You just opt in, you sign, you log in, and you opt in. That's it.
That makes it really quick and efficient, I think.
Yeah, I hope so. We filed a patent for it because this hasn't been done yet in terms of like contracts and agreements. So people thought about it through blockchain, but it's not the same as that. So hopefully we'll get the patent for it. And what I hope to do with this is start to simplify DPAs, SLAs, and even government contracts, right? Where if you're all agreeing to the same terms, the government never changes its terms when you're signing up with them, right? When have you ever redlined a government contract? And it still comes in a photocopy document from the 1980s, like typewritten. I've seen some of these contracts. So our hope is that we can take this to the next level and work with the government agencies. So if they have these master terms and conditions, then anybody doing business with the local government or the state government then just opts in. And that process is done. And all the government has to do is see the number of companies who've opted into these terms.
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me, and I wish you the best of luck with that. Also, yeah, you're welcome. Zoey, let's talk a little bit about Zoey. What?
Oh, Zoey, my baby.
Yeah.
My first baby.
What is it? What is it? What does it
Oh,
do? Like,
Zoey is just a very simple contract management software for very small businesses. If you're a startup, mom and pop shop, I believe that people should form good contracts habits from the beginning, because small businesses become big businesses. And oftentimes we've seen when companies are raising funds or getting acquired or just, start to explode, they have no system, no process of managing their contracts. They hire their first GC at that time. And this person is just looking at create the burden of creating a whole new legal system. I'm sorry, a contracts management system. So we created, it's like QuickBooks for contracts. It's very easy to use. You can create, organize, and analyze contracts in it. I built a proprietary risk algorithm, so the software can see the terms and give you a risk score from both sides. So most people who will be using it are against startup. Maybe they need a master service agreement signed. They can upload it in Zoey and get a risk score from their end and the other party's end. What I found is a lot of times people think, oh, this is so one-sided, they're getting everything. But when you run it through Zoey, you find out actually it might not be as one-sided. They're actually giving up a few things too. We've also created a toggle system in it. So if you put in a term and you see, oh, this is really bad for me, but what if I change it from uncapped to cap? Then it starts to show that your risk is going down. So it gives you kind of these negotiating points as small business owner to say, hey, can we just change it to this, to that? So it's not a full-blown lawyer, it's a contracts expert system. We're connecting it to GPT-4 at the moment to do a few things, automate a few things. But the risk algorithm is still based on my and other attorneys' experience, and we keep updating it. So the whole reason of Zoey is to empower the people, right? Like we want people to be able to run successful businesses, understand what they're signing, not be afraid of big deals, so they can become big businesses and then move on.
and it totally fits in with one of the themes of what you do, which is making the law accessible and humanizing contracts, right? What other ways have you done that?
Oh, pro bono work is always good. Making law accessible is interesting, right? It just depends on the area of law. If it's about criminal justice, then connecting people to the right attorneys, connecting the right technology. Rasa is a great example. I'm, such a fan of Noella and what they're doing. And even though I'm not in that industry, but I've been telling people about this app. It's about second chances, getting your records expunged. That's one way of doing it. I also believe that even in the corporate world, we can continue to preserve justice and make law accessible. Believe it or not, corporate lawyers also need access to justice. Maybe they're representing their company in a situation where somebody's harming them, right? So providing the best support to them, providing the right technology to them. We provide legal services and contracts support services with the attitude, with the goal that if we do this and help them, then the lawyer has the time to then do other things and handle more important things. So that's another way of doing it, but mostly primarily, through our apps and technology. The GlobalNDA is a great example. I feel like a lot of people who don't have the time and the resources to hire lawyers or get a big CLM to manage their NDAs will just be able to opt in. I mean, think about the time and money they saved there. And then, Zoey is another one, and hopefully we'll continue to do it through Crush Legal and some pro bono work there as well.
Well, definitely sounds like it. And then kind of like one thing to bring it all together is the academy. So if you could share a little bit more about what the motivation is there and what's going to happen during the academy. It's in June, right? In Chicago?
Yeah, it's in June. It's on June 21st in Chicago. It's a day after Legal Geek. We are so grateful and happy that Deloitte has become is our venue sponsor, and they have graciously given us their space and also the full floor upstairs, which makes a big difference. So if nothing else, come to the event to experience the beautiful building and space that is Deloitte. So the event came together because we're always learning, and I mentor a lot of new general counsels or in-house counsels or people who are thinking of moving into transactional law. I've been doing this for over 10 years. We also see that there are a lot of events going on in the industry, but a lot of them do not provide the same ROI or value. People spend a lot of time and money going to these events, and if they're not understanding or learning something new, then they lose interest in this. And a lot of sponsors are out there putting a lot of heart and soul going to these events and maybe not getting the same ROI. So we've been observing, and we thought, well, let's create a different type of an event or a different standard for events where everybody gets some value, whether you're learning something, whether you're making connections, and overall, like, have some time to pay attention to each other and provide meaningful connections. And we talked about it last year. We talked about it earlier this year, and then we said, let's just do it. And we're so excited and so grateful that the plan, the new system, the experiment that we have in mind made sense to our sponsors. And grateful that Ironclad and Malbec and Spot Draft and Lexion have all signed up. And my pitch to them was that I see you guys working so hard, and you work you're all startups, you've all gotten some funding, and you have to meet those demands. Let me help you build an environment where the audience can come and learn about contract pain points, and then also see how your product can solve that problem. It's not a sales pitch, it's not a demo, it's not talking about topics that people are not interested in just to get a CLE credit. It's actual pain points solved by technology. So the theme of our event is technically speaking. And you can't talk about contracts without talking about technology. I'm a big CLM adoption advocate. I think all companies that are medium to large size should have a CLM or contract management software. So yeah, we're excited about it. The courses are very, very carefully curated. The speakers are amazing. Cliff Stein, who just retired from the Chicago Bears, is the keynote speaker. And he's also speaking in the crushing negotiation piece. He's wonderful. I mean, he comes with a wealth of knowledge. We also have a few more speakers, and I'll be announcing them. We have a panel on stakeholder relationships. This year's topic is between HR and people ops, and then the other contracts department. How can we improve that? How can we support each other, right? Legal operations and the role of IT and implementation is another panel, and Jonathan Johnson Swagle's on it, Cami Paulson from Deloitte, Lily Shura is on it, and Josh Lazar as well. So we picked speakers that have experience and real life connection. We aren't looking for big name sponsor companies or big name companies to come in. Really want the audience to feel connected and learn something there.
So for any lawyers that are watching this or listening to this on the podcast, and they want to know, like, okay, it's another conference, I might learn something. What is something concrete that they might learn?
They will learn something new, I guarantee it, than they already did, because we're focusing on the practicality of things. And we aren't just bringing speakers in to fulfill some sponsor requirement. We believe, it's my personal belief that time is money. Time is very valuable. I hate having my time wasted, and I'm constantly trying to learn new things. And that eagerness and that hunger, I see that quite a bit in our contracts and legal industry, and even in the business industry. Everybody's looking for something that they can learn something from. So that thirst for knowledge, that excitement, that eagerness is what we are trying to quench at our event. And we hope that it's going to be, successful. It's also not a typical event where you have a bunch of panelists sitting and you ask a question and the mic goes back and forth. We created it to be a TED Talk style event where there's a general topic, and all these speakers will have 8 to 10 minutes to speak uninterruptedly about what they think is, the right way to do things, best practices, or how they've done certain things. I mean, and these people, all the speakers are very admirable, very experienced, and it would be great to just, sit and listen to them with focus and take some real life practical tips from them. There's also an opportunity to ask questions and also to connect with them afterwards. The other thing that we're doing is, this is about connections. If you're a mid-market company, or if you're a lawyer or a contracts person in a company that doesn't have a lot of coworkers, come meet new people, make new friends. If you are a business provider, hey, it's okay, make a deal, right? I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Come here, make connections, make deals, just be respectful of their sponsors, but bring everybody together. I want to unite our industry, the lawyers, the technology providers, the consultants. We should all come together, learn and share with each other. Then only we can tell the world to adopt what we're saying. If we're going to look like we're competing with each other and we're not giving a consistent message, then why would businesses then buy our services, buy our technology? Why would they think that one is, better than the other? I have this philosophy that somebody comes to me and says, oh, but I'm also talking to so-and-so. I say, great, then talk to them, because we're both great. And the thing is, you should hire one of us. You shouldn't be doing this on your own. So pick anyone, you'll be fine, right? And that's my attitude. And that's the kind of energy we're bringing to this event. So if you're a lawyer, contracts manager, if you're a stakeholder from procurement, finance, I encourage you to come and just see how things from all angles, and see how other people have done things, make good connections, find solutions to problems, and have a lot of fun.
Yeah. And so remember, Crush Contracts coming up in June. Uh, one thing that you said that I think it stuck out for me as a different way of approaching a conference is that the problem solution focus, right? Like they kind of fit together like hand in glove, and you're dealing with two separate stakeholders. Like on the one hand, those are the lawyers, those are the practitioners that are dealing with this stuff day in, day out, and they have that problem that they're dealing with. And the solution is the vendors, the people that are sponsoring, and that both of them could be talking about how they approach the problem, what the problem is, and then the solution for that. And then how those two things fit together provides and unlocks a lot of value for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. So the CLM, we created a CLM maximizer workshop. These are there are 4 classes. They're running 2 tracks simultaneously. It's that concept of looking at some pain points, and having the speaker talk about them. One is, AI redlining, the usage and ethics of it, contract security. How do you manage that? So these are, general topics and pain points that happen to, lawyers and legal departments. And they all may be coming up with different ways, and it shouldn't be the case. We need to have some best practices and standard methods of doing it. And we should also learn from other people what are the best things that they're doing. And so when you said the vendor is a solution, yeah, but when the vendor comes and says, here's my solution, you don't really necessarily always buy it. You don't trust them, because you're like, well, you're trying to make a profit. You're trying to make a sale. How is it really? So you want to hear from people who are users, who have experienced this product and say, hey, I have used this product or this technology generically, and this is how it solved my problem. So that's what's unique about our event, is that we're not doing demos or pitches for sponsored classes, or we're not necessarily even talking at all about it. I've been to some sponsored ones where they're so afraid that they won't even mention their technology, right? And that's not the point. Like, if a user, an advocate, an experienced professional, a lawyer talks about a problem and a solution and how some technology helped that solution, then the audience is more open-minded and able to understand and relate. The technology name just happens to be the CLM vendor and the sponsor, but it doesn't matter, because and as much as my CLM friends, vendors want to believe that they have a unique product, they all have the same thing. It just does things a little bit differently. It looks a little bit different, but it pretty much all of them do the same thing. They solve the same contract problems. They're all trying to work towards the same goals. So, it's important that, the problem for the lawyer and the solution from the vendor have a conduit, and the CLM maximizer classes have that conduit.
And it's not all business all the time, right, Roma? I mean, I see you having a lot of fun. You have,
We try to have fun in everything we do, even with work. Work is fun.
Yeah, I mean, like I shared with you earlier, I saw a post that you shared about San Francisco, and you're putting all this together in Chicago for June. I mean, and you also like have a lot going on, I'm sure, with everything else in your life. One thing I ask a lot of the people I talk to, but it's really helpful to find out for each individual, like, how do you do it? Like, how how do I see you posting this stuff 24/7 and you still, get everything done?
I don't get everything done. I work till midnight. I wake up early. It is hard, it's and it has to get done. I think I'm one of those unique people that, just has a natural source of energy, but it's not good. I need to rest. I need to take breaks. And I remind myself of that, because it's not going to be worth it if I'm causing damage to my body, a few years down the road. But I do it because I have a really great team. I have really good colleagues that are helping me with each project. You saw Sarah, she's my COO, she's my right hand. We are able to share work. We are able to delegate to each other. CrushContracts Academy is being organized by myself, Sarah and Jonathan Johnson Swagels. And, so we do work together, and I rely on my support system. I rely on my team members. And when people offer help, I take it now. I don't try to say, oh, I got this. I say, yeah, actually, I do need help. The other day, my boyfriend's mom offered to take our stepdaughter to gymnastics. And in the past, I'd be like, no, I got it. And I said, you know what, that would be great, because I have an event coming up and I have a lot of emails to send. So I would advise that if anybody is in this position of, like, because, when you're scaling, you just have to do everything and you can't sacrifice anything. Take help, receive help. I ask for help and find a good team to work with, people you can trust. And you don't need to have like one person doing full-time work. You can have a few people helping you on a part-time basis. Two, I would say drink a lot of coffee, but or Red Bull in my case, my yellow Red Bull, which is, again, moderation. I know I have to. I'll chill out once the event is over. I'll get my sleep then.
Well, I'm equally guilty of that. I at least have 4 cups of coffee a day, which is probably not the best.
I say, what? As long as you're drinking water. So I have done this. My boyfriend got me this for my birthday.
Oh, neat.
So this does mitigate the amount of caffeine I take in, and
Dilutes the
I found
caffeine.
that. Well, actually, I found that if you actually drink 2 cups of water with the cup of coffee you're having, you actually remain active and energetic longer. The more coffee you drink, the more it dehydrates you. So then you have a different kind of exhaustion. So if you are drinking 4 cups of coffee, make sure you're drinking 8 cups of water just for that coffee, plus your other water.
All right, duly noted. When I was doing research on you to prepare for the podcast, I saw that you're also involved in other things, right? Besides the law, besides the academy and all the planning and stuff, you do some advocacy work.
Yeah, I've always been involved a little bit in some nonprofit and advocacy work. But this year, so when you asked about how else do I make law accessible,
Yeah.
we had a tragedy happen in our community, and it could have been avoided. We looked around and said we have too many railroad crossings within a mile and within feet of schools. And I have always been uncomfortable about it since I moved to this area. It's an affluent area too. It's not a small neighborhood. It's Barrington, Illinois. But the village just didn't prioritize railroad safety. They did other good things, but not this kind of pedestrian safety. And when the tragedy happened, we were extremely distraught, the whole community. We thought about our kids. And I kept saying, why aren't there railroad crossing guards, at least at school times, right across the school? When
Wow. Yeah.
it gives me goosebumps to think that we didn't have this. And so I put together a Facebook group, and I put it out there that I'm going to start volunteering, and whoever wants to join me. And within a couple of days, about 400 people joined that group. These are all parents. We started the Barrington Student Safety Organization. I was able to get enough support from the community, who were also, in agreement. They started volunteering, and we're talking the bitter cold of like late January, early February in Chicago in like 20-degree weather. We're showing up every day, and the police department saw what we were doing, and they started, showing up with us, and we kept pushing and, demanding the village, going after it. And we finally were able to get an approval to add more crossing guards and also increase the pay for the current traffic guards, because there was such a disparity in pay that we didn't even have enough traffic crossing guards. So this community was lacking in safety for children, while it was thinking more about cultural events and this and that. But what matters is our children's safety. So I prioritized that. It did impact my ability to sleep for a little bit, but we're so happy to say that about a couple of weeks ago, the village came around and approved the initiative. So we asked them to. They were able to hire more people. And this is where, I will say what you want, people, about lawyers, but if I wasn't an attorney, this wouldn't have happened, because I knew the laws, the way to go about this, also knowing where the village may have been negligent, just to give them a hint that if they don't do this, what can happen. They knew that me being a lawyer on the other side, that I meant business. They knew the kind of work I did. So it mattered quite a bit that I was a lawyer, and I made law accessible to the community of Barrington. And I appreciate this community so much for standing behind this initiative. And now we have railroad crossing guards in many locations, and the police, who were also a bit nonchalant about it, are now being very vigilant. They are showing up. They have a lot of police cars and undercover cops now watching traffic and just bad drivers. So our community is definitely a lot safer from that work. So yeah, I get involved in other things. I want to advocate for the right things. And I also have to say that the LinkedIn community has been very supportive of this. I was very happy to see the type of response and cheering and encouragement I got from the LinkedIn legal community, which kept me going too, because I was feeling very guilty that I wasn't doing enough for the academy. But this was very important. That children's safety was the most important thing at that time.
Well, that's a real impact, and good on you for doing that.
Thank you, and thank you for your support and encouragement while I was doing it.
And it reminds me of what your mom told you, right? That you can't just say something, you have to do something.
Yeah. You can't just say you don't like it. You have to do something, right? And I tell everybody who's thinking about going into law, if you're doing it just because you need a master's degree, don't do it then. Those are the type of lawyers I don't want. You mess up the curve. You end up getting these good jobs, but you're not happy about it because you weren't hungry and angry enough to do it. You have to be passionate about it, but you have to be angry about something to go into law. That's my philosophy on things. You have to see something that doesn't sit right with you. So you become a lawyer, even if it's corporate, right? Then you have the drive to make things better. But if you are thinking about it, you have some interest in it, talk to us other lawyers, see all the good work that lawyers do for preserving people's rights, for making things better, for making justice system better. Even the small thing is making our community safer happened because I was a lawyer. So it is a noble profession. I'm so glad I'm an attorney. And of all the things that I do with technology, at my core, I'm a lawyer, and I'm proud to be one.
So let me ask you, getting a little personal, but like for you, like what makes it worthwhile? Like what at the end of the day is your motivation for doing all of this?
It's going to sound cheesy, but it feels to me, I do this because my work will inevitably make things better for others, whether it's my team members, whether it's our clients. In some way, we do bring happiness to people. If we can help our client, close all the contracts before they go on vacation so they can be stress-free with their family, that's a good feeling that we have. If everything I do, and I look at this, and at some point my journey is going to end and I'm going to be gone. The work that I do should be sustaining, whether it's the Barrington Student Safety Organization, whether it's CrushContracts, that we continue to provide solutions that the next generation, the generation after, gets to benefit. I talk quite a bit about women's rights and women's health rights and advocacy for our, well-being. Same thing, so that women behind me have a path cleared in front of it, because nothing lasts. I could be gone tomorrow, but I hope that my work continues to benefit, and help the lives of other people.
Well, I know it will. I'm so happy that you were able to join us today and share all of your experience and expertise and thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So for people that are watching or listening, how can they keep in touch with you and follow you?
You can find me online as the Contracts Queen on LinkedIn, or my Instagram or social media, but I say LinkedIn is my primary mode of communication now. You can also reach me at roma.k@crushcontracts.com. I'm happy to answer any questions, help you out. And if I can't help you with something, I will try to find somebody for you that can help you.
Well, you heard it here. Roma Khan, the Contracts Queen. Thank you so much for joining us today on the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. I'm Tom Martin, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.